All right, everybody, good morning. It is May 24th, 2021. It's about 10:31 on the Pacific coast of North America. This is the Open Source Workstream's biweekly meeting for the Inclusive Naming Initiative. I'm Celeste Horgan. I'll be your host today. I will take notes if I can, but if others could help take notes as well, super helpful. I'm going to drop a agenda in the doc. There you go. First things first. Please add your names to the agenda so that we can tell who attended. And I feel like we've got some new faces and I would love some introductions. Would you like to start?
Great.
Yeah, I was gonna just ask Brian. Perfect.
All right. I think I'm a new face. Let me try. I'm sitting in a weird place in the living room because I'm in an office. Brian Dawson, based in San Diego, just leaving a company called CloudBeast and joining Linux Foundation as overseeing DevRel. And in my personal and professional life, I've had a heavy focus on diversity and inclusion. So as soon as I saw this pop up, I wanted to jump in and see how I can help, how I can pitch in. Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jason. Sorry, Brian. Anybody else?
There. I'm fairly new, and I'm Don Albertson, and I work for Penn State, and I write software for the Office of Physical Plant, and I'm a participant in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in our division, as well as having dealt with the Interrogating Bias group. And on the basis of the Interrogating Bias group, I thought this was a worthwhile effort to be advised about. And so I'm basically going to lurk here unless I find that I have something to say, because so far you're been more technical than I am.
Awesome.
It's nice to meet you, Donald.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just kind of organizing my...
Hey, and Donald, quick question. Which division did you say you were in? I didn't quite get where you said you were in Penn State.
I work at the Office of Physical Plant in their Information Technology Systems Department. And we are like an orphan stepchild for all the other IT things on campus.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. I didn't quite get it the first time.
Okay. So I would like to run through issues for this work stream. So I did a bit of work last week, compiling some of the discussion topics that we had into issues so that we could start parsing those out and doing some work. One thing to note is I think I pinged you on Slack about this, Dale, but I didn't get a response. Some of the things that you were talking about last week, I felt like I needed a bit more clarification so I could condense those down into like GitHub issues that I can parcel off to people. So if you and I can have a conversation at some point this week, so I can do that, that would be really helpful.
I can clear time this afternoon if you and I can sync up, but let's go.
I'm free all afternoon, so
okay,
let me know when works for you. Okay, right, wonderful. Thank you.
And somebody else introduced themselves in the chat. Daniel, he may have some mic issues.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I'm Daniel. I'm just looking today, trying to figure out if this is something for me or if the other groups are something that I need to pay attention to. I work with the Apache Software Foundation and I'm in their EDI committee. And I've been writing some tooling and I've sent a introduction to the Google Groups.
Wonderful.
That is presumably in moderation at the moment. with regards to some tooling that I'm working on. And so I'm just here to see if this is a good fit for me.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm super interested to hear a bit more about that tooling, and I will take a little look. I'll take a look at the moderation queue after this meeting for you, okay? But it's lovely to meet you. So I'm gonna say let's go through the open discussion before we loop back around to the project board review. So we had an item pulled over from the from last meeting around adding a machine parsable DCI lint configuration. So this was Peter. And the discussion that we had was around whether or not we were ready to merge this configuration just yet. And thank you, Kartik, for adding a link to the issue that I opened.
So it was my pull request, and I just wanted to add a little extra piece of information, which is that if the community would prefer to have it in a different format that is actually just matching the format of another pre-existing linter tool, I would not mind updating my pull request to match that format. So I'm not strongly opinionated on the documents format itself. The only thing that I would want out of this is to have at least one machine parsable version of the INI's recommendations.
Okay, so I think we definitely, per the GitHub issue linked, I think we're definitely going to have at least one. But the question I have is really who would like to spearhead this? What kind of format do we want? Effectively, who would like to own this?
Celeste, in your opinion, who would be the best person to own it? Is it somebody, because I know before we talked about, what could possibly have been holding some of these backlog requests up. And I don't think it had much to do with formatting so much as, scoping. And I would hate for Peter to have to reformat if that wasn't the actual root cause of what was going on.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the concern, like Stephen was raising a concern about, are we making decision about which tools we are, endorsing with this? And then, these are the 4 terms that we have been working on, but then is it like, are we, is this something that the language workstream, I mean, are we at the point where we're saying this is the official, like, pull from the INI website here, or, an INI, domain here to get like this official list in some, because I think that I think it was less about having a particular format than having a format that is matching some particular tool and saying like, this is a blessed tool. So that was something that we could talk about. I mean, what, are we coming up with the blessed tools? Are we coming up with suggestions? Because I mean, this actual thing of taking these 4 terms and putting them into a machine readable format is, you know, it's a small thing. So I don't think that's necessarily what's holding it up. I don't know, it'd be good if we had Stephen here, because I know he had some specific concerns
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah, but I've been pinging him all morning on stuff, and he does not appear to be at his computer. So I can't really help you there.
So Peter, since I think you were one of the folks asking for this, are there a couple of specific problems you wanted to solve with this issue? By addressing
Yes.
this issue? Yeah, Peter?
I want to be able to have the tooling to pull the recommendations of the INI so that I don't have to produce my own set of recommendations, because I do not want to be the authority on that. It seemed to me like when I discovered the INI, because Lindsay was recommending it to me to check it out, it immediately clicked to me that it's great that there's this organization who puts in all this work so that others can reuse it. So to me, it seemed like a great match for the purpose of the INI to having published the recommendations in a human readable format. It would fit very well to translate the same thing for machines at the same time.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're saying you really are focused on taking the terms we've all agreed to and the replacement terms, or just the terms we've agreed to replace? Is it both the terms to be replaced and the replacement terms, or just the terms to be replaced?
Just the terms are in the pull request.
Yes. Yes, but I'm completely open to extending it. So once again, I'm not insistent on any kind of
Yeah.
specific format as long as it's machine parsable.
Okay. All right. So that should be a fairly straightforward thing to do, right?
Yeah. So
Technically
and that kinda leads
straightforward.
to my next question on this is there a lazy consensus we can take on this? Because I don't, where I'm leaning with this right now is, unless we have strong opinions about wanting a different format or wanting to define our own format or whatever that looks like, then I don't see why we shouldn't accept this at this point. It's been sitting and the work is done, and that's lovely. So first question is there a lazy consensus we can take? The second question I have is the website repository the right location for this? Or for example, would its own GitHub repository make a bit more sense? Particularly say, for example, Peter is contributing the DCI lint configuration. If somebody wanted to contribute a veil configuration in the future, would it make more sense to have that as a central repository rather than in the website?
I like the idea of a central separate repository.
Okay.
For that, exactly the reason you just said.
That kind of makes more sense to me too. That makes more sense to me too.
Anybody has a concern with that?
Well, if you think about what is the value of this, like why have it hosted here as opposed to just hosting it on, you know, the site on a separate site? And the value would be that, I mean, a separate, like this tool, this DCI tool, this could be hosted there. The value of it being hosted at INI is that INI is maintaining this list, and then presumably as we add terms in the future, and they will automatically be there. So, you know, you can point there and always have the canonical thing. But I think the problem with that is that we haven't set up, like we provide a machine readable, or we provide this canonical set of terms as a service of the INI. I mean, you know, it's kind of early days, and that's just not something that we have. Because the question is, okay, so when a term is added, who adds that term, or what's the process around that? And if we don't even have any of those questions answered, then we're kind of like purporting to provide a service that we haven't thought through, or even, you know, we don't have anything to back up. I think that's the kind of the concern about doing it, is putting more official stamp on it than, you know, our internal processes
Yeah,
merit. I thought that was kind of what Stephen was getting at when he was raising an objection last time.
Yeah,
yeah, I think so too. And again, unfortunately, he's not kind of responsive today, so I can't really, I do not pretend to intuit the mind of Stephen Augustus.
so could we take this as an action to work through, maybe with Peter? And I think I saw a couple of others.
Yeah,
Jason, as part of the tools sub, I don't know, you're a
Yeah.
substream or work stream, and then come back, sort of like, you know, what we would like, what ultimately would we like to do? What would we be able to do now? And we'll pull Stephen in, and then what would be the step? What would be the steps and the dependencies to get to that ultimate state, right, where we are supporting maybe a separate repository that's endorsed? Do we need governance changes, code of conduct? Is there something else that needs to be in
Yeah.
place? We can get there. And maybe there's
Yeah.
an interim contribution we can make maybe on our current site that just says, here's some things you can use, but it's not, you know, formal, something like that. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's frustrating because it is a small thing and it's not a big deal to just merge something. But I think, you know, we should be thoughtful about, you know, how we're implementing it. I mean, as
Yeah.
far as less about the format, the more about
The implications
process
bigger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
So
That,
Peter, are you willing to work with us on that? Just so, you know, since you brought this one forward?
Yeah, of course. And one
Okay.
more note is that, again, from the technical perspective, it makes no difference to me if it's in a separate repository, if or not. So I'm willing
Sure.
to go there with whatever's the decision. It
Okay.
doesn't matter.
I think it's for the team as well to understand though the implications of governance as we make technical tooling decisions. So I do think it's worthwhile effort to bring in what, you know, what's the ask, what's the vision, what we'd like to do, what are the dependencies or the barriers to getting there, and how do we address it? I think it's good for, because this is not the only thing we're going to run into this with. So I think it's a good one to start with. Relatively low, you know, simple for us to consume, and then we can use it as a repeatable pattern for other things we might want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Lindsay.
Great. So Dale, should we expect for maybe a smaller, more focused meeting around that with you, Stephen, Peter, and anyone else who would like to join, or
I'm
what
thinking
should we
that,
be looking
and
out
we
for?
can also talk in Slack. We have a Slack channel, right, Celeste, as well?
We do have a Slack
Okay.
channel.
Okay.
It is
So that's-
the Workstream community channel.
So we can
It's
do
a community.
plus a Slack conversation as well.
Sounds good.
Good.
Okay. I will leave it to one of Peter or Dale to sort of spearhead that conversation. And please, and for the rest of you, please pay attention to Slack. Okay. That sounds good. Dale and I are going to have a conversation about this, and I'm just going to summarize with an action item. Okay. So that's the needs further clarification. Before we move on.
People to show demo tools that they're aware of or they're involved with. And
Sorry, could you start that again? You kind of broke up towards the
request,
beginning.
sorry, I'm not, okay, let me just fix my link. Request for showcasing or demoing tools that are being used for inclusive naming. And I'm wondering if we should, we can start that, you know, but also start collecting what's the set of tools in this space. And my question was, do we just want to create an issue with, you know, a table where people can, you know, do markdown to share the tools? Or is there some other approach people would like to take? Maybe we start with open source, since that's probably, you know, more aligned with this. And then if there's other enterprise tools, we can do that as a second wave.
That's something that's come up a few times.
Yeah, that's why I wanted
recently.
to. I see a number of notes flying around and
Yeah.
offering, and I feel we're not addressing that. So we should
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
do that. a plan in some way,
Yeah.
right? To
So this, I guess, is a good this is a good segue into kind of the question you asked is it time to create a GitHub issue?
yeah, and I actually was looking to see if we already had one because I thought I had seen one, but then I
think
saw
we do.
projects, but I don't know if I saw tools.
Maybe this just really needs a rename.
I think this would be the perfect sort of, you know, in the order of operations, right? If we essentially have this conversation with Peter, we can pull out all of the sort of governance related questions we would be looking to answer, and then, you know, sort of use that to guide any follow-on questions or processes that follow after the demos. Because one thing is just showing off a tool that, you know, you've created. The other is getting it added to that sort of curated list.
Right.
You know, and what that would entail. So I think that, like, if we started off with you know, the conversation and nailing down what sort of things we would like to see from Peter's project, it could flow nicely into giving any, you know, potential folks who wanted to demo a good set of, you know, straightforward instructions on what we would be looking for, expecting.
Okay, but could we do some parallel processing? Because right now I think there's, you know, some pent up supply here of people with tools, and it doesn't mean we endorse it. We're just looking with a link, maybe. What do they have?
Yeah. So I guess
yeah.
I guess what's interesting to me about like the tooling bit is it's really how do we want to approach it?
Okay.
Do we want to like do a survey of all known tools? Do we sort of want to go as Lindsay suggests and like see what tools people want to demo to us and then add them to our list as we go? Like both what is the goal and how do we want to approach it?
I think one of the goals, and this is just from my perspective, and then I'll ask others to weigh in, is first to understand what exists and what is it already, what already is being covered. And it serves two purposes, right? For those who are not necessarily part of this work stream, it gives them a view of, is there stuff out there I can actually use that's, you know, and what's the barrier to usage? Is it just something I go pull and use? What's out there? And then the other place is there a white space? Is there a need for certain functionality that none of the tools are providing? So one is what exists. The second is, to Lindsay's point, how do we help people assess whether you should even be introducing this into your, you know, code or your content environment safely, right? So sort of the safe passage assessments, which I think the work we do with Peter will help to flesh out. And then the third is there a white space where there's a need for tools, and then we can maybe survey to say that, do we have any tools that provide these kinds of functions? That's kind of where my thought was.
Yeah, that's kind of where I sort of had the idea of filling gaps as well. Like, I think that's an interesting concept. So my question for you in terms of moving forward is, do we kind of just want people to start like throwing links to projects that they know about in the issue? Do we want to be a little bit more organized, maybe have a spreadsheet like we did for language? Like,
I was thinking we create a table, right, in the and allow them to just add it to the table, maybe rather than spreadsheet, since we are IT. Or tools.
Yeah, that does make sense. Okay. Okay. And I mean, we could almost. I'm just going to capture that quickly. You know, we could almost do that just directly on the website with the caveat of this is another process thing, right? Like if I were to create a page on the website, which was effectively like known tools, throw an empty markdown table on it. you sort of have to have you do have to have a bit of governance around that, or else people will add all sorts of things.
Yeah. So we should have agree on what we're going to put in the. I'm a little leery of just putting it out on the site right away.
Yeah.
I think it maybe needs to be like in an issue first, and give people sort of what the headers are that we want. Create the headers with the first row.
Yeah.
And then if there's something else people want to add, they can propose it as a
Yeah.
as a
So,
request. Yeah.
What I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first rename this folder.
Okay.
But I think what I'll probably do is I'll add a markdown document in this folder with the headers that we're suggesting, and then I'll say, please open a PR against this.
Yeah, that's kind of what my thinking is. And then people can look at it and we should say, what is it? If brief description, the name, the description, what does it do?
Yeah.
Right. And maybe if there is does it use AI, for example, or so we have an understanding of it, and that way we get a view of, do we have like 20 tools in the same space doing similar things? And then I always have questions about security. Right.
It's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah. And then is there a white space, right? Are there things, and I don't know if it's the same, maybe we leave a column for requirements, which is what are people asking for? Or maybe that's a separate table, and then we can look and see, okay, if there's requirements people are coming up with that are not satisfied by what we have, then we can do a survey to say, does anybody have tools that are in this space, right, that meets these requirements? But we do need a group, though, I think, who's going to look at how do you, to your point, curate these tools and say we'll endorse them, or at least we vetted them in some way.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess so let's kind of condense this into an action item.
Yeah. So the first is inventory, to create a table to inventory what we have, right?
And then I think there's another one, which is kind of discussing like how we want to curate.
And should we put a calendar, a date in there for if people want to demo as well? Since we've got a few offers for demos in the same first table.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Here's my tool, or the tool, and here's, when we'd like to demo it,
Okay. Okay, so I can take the action item here to like set up effectively the framework for a table. If somebody would like to kickstart that discussion on tooling and how we want to curate tooling, and the other thing here too that actually influences the table a little bit is like, what information do we care to collect?
Right.
But I think I can I'll give it a first shot with the table with what's on my mind. And we can kind of talk in the PR review.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Any comments from others? Because I gave my view, and I don't think we gave others a chance to say what
I
their
know.
thoughts were.
I'm sorry for talking so much.
If I could interrupt, would it make sense to distinguish between tools in general and then tools that follow or implement the whatever the INI comes up with more in a more stringent manner, so that you have this is a tool that does this and that, and this is a tool that follows the recommendation that's set out by the INI.
But I think that also gets it's funny because I think that gets to like Peter's PR, which is, I don't think we need to tightly couple a tool that can do the inclusive language things like a linter or an AI library or whatever versus what the INI produces. Like, we're effectively producing like consumable data in a format that those tools can consume. And that's actually going to be useful for us down the road when you really think about it, because we'll have done an inventory of the tools. And then as we start producing data, the question becomes, now what formats do we need to produce to be consumable by popular tooling?
Fair enough.
So that may be, if we think of it as in terms of agile sprints, we might be collecting just the tools and what formats they used, they accept today. In parallel, we'll have this other sprint, Peter's sprint, I'll call it, for want of a better term, that discusses what formats we would, recommend. And then we may have another iteration on the tools that say which are the ones that meet those formats. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good framing for it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're over time, so I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit. We have one action item, which is effectively starting a process discussion with Peter, Jason, Stephen, and Dale are the ones I have down, around if we were to accept Peter's DCI lint configuration, what are the pieces of process and repositories and infrastructure that we need to have in place to do that? I would like that discussion to be done by our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay. I think Lindsay wanted to be part of that as well.
Lindsay as well. Perfect. The more the merrier. And y'all are going to talk on Slack, I believe.
Slack, and we'll probably do a meeting if we think it's worth it to just.
Okay, I think that's totally good.
Yeah.
I know, at least personally, like if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist sometimes. So whatever you need to do, and if you need like a Zoom link or whatever, please let me know.
Okay.
I have an action item to create a table to inventory what we know about tooling with proposed demo dates in it. I have an action, and we have another action item to start a discussion on how we want to curate these tools. Okay. Thank you all very much for your time. Because we only meet every couple of weeks, for those of you who are new, please pay attention to Slack. There's a link to the inviter at the top of the agenda if you have not received it for whatever reason. And I will see you on the internet. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'll talk to you.